Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We're glad you're here for today's webinar, Budgeting 101, Getting Started. I'm Greg Berry, Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. A disclaimer, as with any virtual event, occasional technical hiccups may occur. If you experience any video or audio issues, simply click Reconnect or refresh your screen to return to the presentation quickly. Let's kick things off with a quick poll to get a sense of where everyone is starting. How confident do you feel about managing your money? On your screen, you're going to see these options rather. You're very confident with your money, somewhat confident, neutral, not very confident, or not confident at all. I'm going to go ahead and leave that poll up so you can submit your answer. And just a heads up, we are recording today's webinar. Our live audience will get an email with the link once it's ready. Today, we're excited to have Abbi Gargus joining us. She's a 2014 graduate with degrees from the School of Education and Human Sciences and College of Arts and Sciences. Abbi's currently Director of Brand Communication at Legacy Credit Union. Now, before tossing things over to Abbi, here are the results of the first poll. I'm going to go ahead and end that. It looks like nobody's very confident, Abbi. Zip, 48. So about half of our audience are somewhat confident, and then the rest fall basically neutral or not very confident. Now, we are going to ask a follow-up question. We'd love to hear from you again. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to budgeting? Choose the option that best reflects your experience. Is it sticking to the plan, knowing when to start, tracking expenses consistently, making room for unexpected costs, or finding time to review your budget? We're going to keep this poll up a bit so we can see what your response is. So at this time, I'd like to turn things over to Abbi. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, as Greg said, I'm Abbi. I'm a proud UAB alum, and I'm with Legacy Credit Union. I started my career in the collections department before scooting on over to our marketing team. So I have a very interesting take on financial education, having seen it kind of from both sides of the spectrum. And my goal today is to help you feel more confident in your budgeting capabilities going forward. So let's just go right on in and get started. The question is, where do I start? We're going to tackle a few questions first. Why? And unpack why you make the financial choices you do, and identify some of the feelings and behaviors that can impact those choices. We may not understand how those things impact right now, but they do. Your previous thoughts, feelings, and behaviors can definitely impact your spending choices. We're going to talk about what. So identify what is going on in your finances. We want you to take a deep dive into patterns and behaviors that impact your finances. And then we're going to address how we can make adjustments to meet your financial goals and needs now that we know the information about why we make choices and maybe what choices we make. So the why. What financial patterns and behaviors were modeled for you during your upbringing? How did those around you respond to money? And what level of involvement or understanding did you have regarding your financial situation in your family growing up? These are all things that can either consciously or subconsciously impact how we view finances and money. If the patterns and behaviors modeled for you when you were growing up were always that of stress related to finances, or you knew that your family was always robbing Peter to pay Paul. Maybe this month the car note's late, so next month we need to pay that on time, but that means that the mortgage is going to be late. You're going to have some unconscious opinions and biases that shape how you view money based on that experience. How the people around you responded to money. Was it something that was shameful? Was it something that money was the key to everything? Was a lot of emphasis placed on money and status? That can impact how you view money in your personal life. And then the level of involvement you might have had in finances growing up. Maybe you came from a family that openly discussed budget, and if we couldn't do something, they explained why that didn't fit in the budget, and maybe we can address it to make it work next time. Maybe you came from somebody that you weren't really involved in the budgeting, but you knew if your family didn't have the money to do something, if you got told no a lot to things that weren't absolute needs, or if you were from a family that had a lot of financial means and maybe you weren't involved because money was never an issue, anything you asked for, you got. All of those different scenarios will impact maybe the way you view money and how you choose to spend your money in the future. And that's going to help you understand some of the patterns. What goes behind that are some emotional responses to money. A lot of people have fear. They're scared they don't have enough money. They're scared of looking unintelligent because they don't know how to balance a budget. They don't know how to stay on top of their finances. And that can be humiliating if people find out that maybe you're not in a great spot financially. A lot of people also have guilt surrounding money. They're concerned about being a burden on others if they're having to ask friends or family for help, if you're having to go into a financial institution and explain, this is my situation, I need help with that. And there's also some guilt that maybe you're in the situation you're in because you haven't worked as hard as others. And a lot of times that's not the case. You don't know others' financial situation. You don't know how hard they have or haven't worked, what they might have been given that you didn't have access to. And that can change how you view money. There's shame that you might let others or yourself down if you have a family relying on you, or maybe you don't want to let yourself down with your financial decisions. Maybe you're already too far in debt and you're scared you can't dig yourself out of that. Or you're not too far in debt yet, but you know you have a spending problem that you need to get in control. And then lastly, and one of the most common ones, is envy. This is comparing yourself to others or the keeping up with the Joneses mentality. I know I'm guilty of this. Everybody posts a highlight reel on social media, and it's really easy to open that app and look and see somebody in a same life stage as me taking international or cross-country trips, what seems like every couple of months. And it makes me look around and go, wow, what are they doing that I'm not doing? What is their job? How much money do they make? How can they afford this? And I want to go ahead and stop you right there, because I can almost certainly say most of the people you see probably can't afford that. They're probably not in any different situation than you. That may not be the case. They may have managed their finances exceptionally well. They may have very well-paying jobs, but a lot of these people are living paycheck to paycheck. They're spending money they don't have on credit cards, and you're comparing yourself to somebody that really doesn't exist. So we know why you may have some of the beliefs or feelings you have surrounding money, whether it is the fear, the guilt, the shame, but we need to talk about what is actually going on. So what are those emotions doing in your actual everyday spending patterns? And so let's first identify those patterns. When you take a look back and you're getting ready to prepare budgets, we're going to go through the steps of how we do that, but we want you to keep a couple things in mind. To start, you're going to identify the behaviors you have. And that means taking a look through your spending and saying, okay, it's the 23rd of the month and I'm down to $20 in my bank account again, and I've got to make it to the end of the month on $20. Or there's 3 days until your next payday and your account's already overdrawn again. If you're seeing patterns like that, that's something that we need to address and dive deeper into. Or maybe you're seeing the opposite. Each payday, it comes up and you've got excess money and you're like, that's just sitting there. What do I do with that? Once you've identified some of these patterns, we want you to understand the behaviors. What's driving those patterns and the decision-making that's leading you to that? Are you spending money based on convenience? We live in a world where we want everything and we want it now and we want it fast and we want it easy. And that's something as simple as buying prepackaged snacks instead of packaging our own, or paying top dollar for convenience fees like DoorDash and grocery delivery that maybe we can cut back on. Also, one thing about your behaviors is, are you operating now like you were worried about your future? Are you thinking about the future now? Or are you truly in the day-to-day where you can't see past next week or next paycheck? And then once you understand those behaviors and you've identified those patterns, you're going to adjust. We want you to take the information you've gathered about your spending and your habits, and we want to come up with a plan and make adjustments. All right, so how do we even do that? How do we start? And we start with a basic understanding of how your income should be allocated. The 50-30-20 rule is 50% of your income should go to essential expenses, 30% of your income should go to your financial priorities, and then the remaining 20% of your income should go to lifestyle choices. So what do we consider essential expenses? These are the things that you have to have. They're non-negotiables. So this is going to be your home, whether that is rent, your mortgage, your home insurance, and the maintenance that goes along with that. Your transportation. We live in an area that does not have public transportation readily available. So for most of us, being able to afford transportation means we probably have an auto loan and a car note. We're paying for insurance for that vehicle. We're paying for gas for that vehicle. And we also have to keep up with the maintenance so we don't encounter bigger issues down the road. Utilities is going to be part of that essential expense. We're talking water and electricity. So you need the lights and the water running in your dwelling. That's something you need to account for. And then lastly is food. So this is groceries. And I also have in there like your typical home supplies that you need, like necessary cleaning supplies, toilet paper, things like that, that you have to keep stock in your house. Then we move on to 30%, the financial priorities. In these financial priorities, we're talking savings, retirement, financial products, and medical expenses. So when we say savings, the big one we're talking about and we want you to tackle first is an emergency fund. If you don't have an emergency fund, full stop, we really want you to look at that and to start working on that as your first savings. But if you've got a little bit of that saved up, then it can also be talking about saving for holidays, a nest egg for the future, discussing investment opportunities. Next is your retirement. A lot of people, if you are employed full-time, you're going to have access to a retirement fund or account provided by your employer that you can contribute to. We can't give you investment advice, but we do heavily encourage you to make sure you're getting with your HR professional at your company and finding out how you can maximize what you're putting into that if your employer has a match. If you don't have any retirement plan through your employer, we encourage you to seek out an individual retirement plan through a financial institution or a wealth management company. And the next is financial products. So these are going to be personal loans, credit cards, different insurances like life insurance, credit, life, disability, anything like that that you may need to make sure that you're taking care of a safety net or security for yourself. And then lastly in this category is your medical expenses. And that's going to be medicine and treatment or medical aid. For a lot of people who don't have any pre-existing conditions, this is going to more than cover that. But if you do have any type of medical history, pre-existing conditions, you may want to adjust this a little bit to account for that. And then lastly is the column that we probably all love the most. It's your lifestyle choices. This includes entertainment, personal care, clothing, hobbies, dining out, other expenses that maybe aren't exactly required. And unfortunately, this is the column that if you have to start whittling down things and removing things from your spending habits that you're probably going to need to cut from first, which is why it is the smallest category. And how do we want you to do this? When you're looking at what you're spending and why you're spending things and you're working towards getting a plan together, well, we want you to be smart about it. So you're going to start with setting some goals. And when you set these goals, we want you to think about the SMART acronym. And that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So let's walk through this a little bit. When we say specific, instead of saying, well, my goal is to save more money. Okay, good. That's a great place to start. But that's not going to be very helpful for you in the long run. So we want your goal to be more specific, like save $1,000 by August 1st. That way you know how much you want to save and when you want to save it by. And next, we want that goal to be measurable. So adding that time frame, adding that amount. Save more doesn't give us anything to measure because define more than what you saved last time. Is that $1? Is that $1,000? So I have saved $50 and I have $950 to go. You're measuring that progress as you go. Next, we want your goals to be achievable. If your goals aren't achievable, you're probably not going to be able to follow through with them. If you say, I will need to save $125 a month to reach $1,000 saving goal by August, that's probably an achievable goal for you. And if it's not, if you look at your finances and you're like, I don't have $125 extra a month to save, I only have 75, then you either need to adjust the total amount you want to save, or you need to adjust the date by which you want to save it. And then we want your goals to be relevant. These are your goals. They're not your mom's, they're not your partner's, they're not your best friend's. If a goal doesn't matter to you, saving for it probably isn't going to matter either. So make sure that whatever your goal is for saving is relevant and you have a reason why you want to save it. Maybe I want to save $1,000 by August so I can go on a vacation or buy concert tickets that release in September. That's something that's going to be motivating to you because you have vested interest. And then lastly, we want your goals to be time bound. Deadlines can be your friends. They don't have to be harsh. They don't have to be set in stone, but they're really good guides. Like we said at the very beginning with specific, if you just say, I want to save $1,000, but you don't have a time frame, how are you going to measure that? And then how are you also going to look towards the end goal there if you don't know when that end goal is supposed to come up? So you can set a time frame, and then if you get halfway through, reevaluate. If you need to change that time frame, that's fine. But we want you to kind of have an end goal in sight with the time frame of when you want this goal to happen. So we're talking about goals. What types of goals do we need to be setting? And we're looking at 3 different types right here: short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. Your short-term goals are going to take you 6 months to a year. And that's really where your day-to-day expenses are going to come in. These are going to be little things that you can change relatively soon to make a big impact to reach these goals. Medium-term goals are going to be goals that you would like to reach in the next 1 to 5 years. These are going to be a little bit higher dollar items that you're probably not going to be able to just come up with savings for overnight, but this is going to be the part where you do need to save. It's not going to be in your day-to-day spending. And these are things like cars, down payments for homes, or larger vacations. And then lastly are your long-term goals. And to achieve these goals, you're going to want to use investing. And these are goals that are 5+ years out. So we're looking at things like a children's college fund or retirement, or possibly saving for wedding years down the road, whatever it might be. These are going to be goals that require quite a good bit more funds, and it's going to take a lot longer to save. And we don't want you to be saving for something for 20 years just in a savings account. We want to make sure you're putting that money in somewhere where it's going to grow and you're going to be able to get more out of it over time. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to meet these goals? What changes are we going to make? And what actual steps are we going to put into place so that we have a good understanding of what's going on in our finances? Well, we're going to use a 5-step spending plan. And we're going to go over all of these steps here in a moment, but they're all relatively simple on paper. I know that's easier said than done, but if you follow some of these steps and make some tweaks, you can get a budget that will work for you and your specific situation. So step 1 is going to be start at the beginning. We want to list all of our income sources. And you might think, okay, my income source is my paycheck. And that's probably true. That's probably your biggest source of income. But there are lots of little places of income that we don't always consider when we're thinking about what money is coming in. Paycheck is going to be the biggest one for most people. But then there are also things like, do you receive a yearly or a quarterly bonus or incentive that you can count on to some degree? It may not always be the same, but you know it's roughly 2% of your salary. Do you receive dividends or interest on different accounts you have? Does your checking account pay you a monthly or quarterly interest? And you always meet the terms to get that. If you are receiving Social Security or a pension, does that come in? Do you always get a tax refund or an EIC that you can count on? And do you receive child support or alimony? These are all sources of income that if you receive them regularly or annually and you can count on them, we want them included in your income. Next, we want you to determine your fixed and variable expenses. So we know what you're bringing in, but what are you paying out? Your fixed expenses are going to be things that do not change month to month. So your car payment, your insurance, your student loan payment, your mortgage, your rent, most of those things set at a fixed payment. And the only thing that may change is if you're on a student loan forgiveness plan that's income-based, or every now and then your insurance will increase, and so you have to reevaluate that. But for the most part, these stay the same monthly. Your flexible expenses are the things that a range of what you need to pay each month in order to get everything you need for them. But the exact dollar amount varies a little bit. Your food and grocery bill, your utilities may go up or down if it's really cold or really hot out. Your gas, obviously gas prices rise and fall. And then your entertainment expenses. So a general dollar amount that you want to keep it within, but it's not always the exact same amount every month. And then your periodic things are things like insurance, taxes, car tags, garbage pickup. These are things that oftentimes people forget about. If you forget that you have to pay property taxes if you own a home, when you get that in October, that can kind of throw you for a loop. Or same for car tax. We are a 2-car household. When my car tax come in every year, I'm like, oh, this hurts. If you're not preparing for that, it can really throw your budget completely off. So you want to make sure you include that. Same with garbage pickup. Ours is quarterly, and that can be anywhere from $25 to $100+. And it's not that it's a huge expense, but if you forget that bill's laying on the counter and you forget to pay it, then you can lose trash pickup or you can get late fees. And so you've got to factor in those periodic expenses as well. Once we know what our income is and what our expenses are, we want to balance that, okay? If your income is more than your expenses right now, that's great. That means you probably have a little extra money, and we want you to take that money and figure out how you can use it to save more. And we will talk about saving a little bit later. But if your expenses are more than your income, you're going to have to make changes. And those changes may be little things like changing day-to-day behaviors and looking for spending leaks. Or if you make a bunch of small changes and you realize I'm still just not moving the needle and I'm spending so much more than I make and that's going to catch up with me, then we may need to look at big changes. Do you have a very large car note and you can sell that car and get a car that costs less per month, or a gas guzzler that you can get something a little bit more efficient? Are you living in a house and apartment that is just well beyond what you can afford? And one thing that a lot of people don't like to look at because it's really hard is if you make all the changes and it's just not moving the needle, do you need to look at possibly finding a job that increases your income? So what are some of the things when we talk about expenses and things that we can look at to find ways to cut back the amount we're spending? Spending leaks are huge. And they're little things that a lot of times go unnoticed, but when you sit down and you really look at them, they add up to a lot. So some common spending leaks are things like utility leaks. Do you have a person in your household that it is like every light in the house is on? If they have been in a room in that day, the light is left on. You're always going back behind them, turning out lights. Do you have somebody, I'm guilty of this, if I'm messing around in the sink, I leave the water running. Things like that add up quickly with energy costs and water costs. And it's a quick fix. Flick the light off when you leave the room. Turn the faucet off when you're brushing your teeth. Turn it back on when you need to rinse your toothbrush. Save a little bit of water. Things like adjusting the thermostat up or down just a degree or two. If you're not home, you don't have to have your heat running at the temperature you want it when you're home. Bump it down a few degrees. Same for the summer. Don't get too crazy because you don't want a 7 or 8 degree differential. That's going to cost a lot to bring it back to temp when you get home. But those are some minor adjustments. Other things are ignored repairs. So if you ignore a small thing, eventually you're going to have to address it when it's a big thing. And it is so pesky to deal with some of these small things, but if we do them now, it's going to cost us less. And that's things like a leaking faucet that eventually floods the whole kitchen, or not getting a regular oil change and now you have to do a major car repair. Other things are unused services, and I feel like in this day and age, this is a huge one. Everything has a free trial, and then guess what we forget to do? We forget to cancel it. And now we're getting charged for something we don't use and we don't even know that we're paying for. So go back and make sure that you're not paying for things that you don't use, or you're not paying for premium subscriptions for things that you could go back down to a base level. A couple other things are late and service fees, or NSF and courtesy pay fees. These are big ones that take a little bit more to address and adjust. So if you get behind on your bill one time and then you can't ever catch up, and every month you're getting a late fee, that's something that adds up quickly, not just from a money perspective, but it could have implications for your credit and your standing with your financial institution. And we want to address that. Same for overdrawing your account. If you get a $32 fee every time you swipe your card when your account is in the negative, that's a lot of fees adding up. So we either need to make it to where your account's not in the negative, or make sure we're being strategic that maybe I go and I get the cash out and I get one fee versus swiping 3 or 4 times and getting 3 or 4 fees. And then a few other things are leftover and excess products. So if we make enough for 4 meals and we only eat off that meal once, and that food sits in our refrigerator, and then we throw it out, that's a bunch of waste, and that costs money. Same for getting excess products because it's on sale or because I saw it and I needed, and I get home and I realize we have 7 packs of toilet paper and I could have saved that money. And then lastly, this one's a big one, paying for convenience. So we have food services and grocery delivery that adds up. You've got service fees, you've got tips for your drivers, you've got delivery fees. And then typically these products and services also have an upcharge on the product itself that you would not have if you called it in or you went to the grocery store yourself. There's also things like, are you paying for a cleaning service or someone to handle your lawn that you can do yourself? Are you getting your nails, your lashes, your hair done multiple times? And yes, we love those products, but can we do that ourselves? Or if we're looking for places to cut, can we cut those things for a little bit and then maybe come back to them as a once in a while treat? And then step 4, we want you to review your income and expenses. We've talked about what we come in. We've talked about what goes out. We've looked at ways that we can maybe clean up some of our expenses and cut back. Once you've got that idea in place, we want you to track your expenses. It's not a one-time thing. You have to continually do this, whether it's weekly or monthly or even quarterly, which is a bit infrequent, but we want you to track it, and we want you to continually look for places you can save. Saving is something that I kind of feel like when you start decluttering a room, at first it's a little bit hard to get rid of stuff. And then once you get your momentum going, you're like, everything must go. Saving can be like that. You can start cutting things out little by little and then realize, I don't really want to pay for this. I can cut that out. I can get this money back when you see the added value it gives to other areas of your finances. Then we want you to analyze and revise the plan as needed. It's not stagnant. You grow, your needs change, so your budgeting and spending plan should as well. And then lastly, we want you to go back and look at the goals you've made for short, medium, and long term and see, is my plan still aligned with those goals? And then lastly, we want you to manage this system. So continue to track your expenses regularly. Keep on top of the bills you're paying. Audit your accounts monthly. Review those goals quarterly, annually, update them. Identify if the spending plan fits those goals, and then make the changes and adjust when needed. So, how do we save? How do we even do that? How do we get to the point? And maybe you're not to that point yet. Maybe you're still thinking, okay, I've got to get my spending under control before I can even think about saving because I am treading water financially. That's totally fine. I'm going to get to some ways that you can practically apply these steps and get there. But if you're at the point where you're like, I can start saving a little bit now, this is going to help you. So one of the easiest ways to save is find a roundup account. Lots of financial institutions offer them. Legacy offers one called incentive savings. And so it's very simple. If you swipe your debit card, it rounds up that purchase to the next whole dollar and it puts it in a savings account. So for us, our savings account, our incentive savings, actually pays you 5% annual percentage yield on the first $1,000 that you save. So if you're already using your debit card, this is a very easy, passive way to save. We do all the stuff on the back end for you. Your financial institution will. They move the money, and it helps you save little by little without making big impacts on your day-to-day budget. And you don't have to do anything. You just check the account every now and then. If you want to save a little bit more money, you can set up automatic transfers or payroll deductions. This is something that it is going to take a little bit of work on the front end to set up. But once you set those things up, you submit the forms, you get it going, you're good to go, and you really don't have to do much to make sure that anything is happening. It's going to move your money for you automatically. And one pro tip I love to say is don't put that savings in an account that you can access easily. So if you have a couple of different accounts at different financial institutions, maybe make this automatic transfer go to a savings account at an account that you don't have a checking account at. So if you wanted to get that money, you're going to have to go and withdraw it, and it's going to be a whole thing. If you have it to where you can see it and access it, you're more likely to move that money out when you want it versus leaving it there to save for the thing you're actually saving for. And then lastly is probably the most hands-on approach, and it's different types of money challenges. So there's a 52-week challenge, and basically what it is it's one saving amount per week for the entire year, and you can do it a couple different ways. Week 1, you save $1. Week 2, you save $2, and by week 52, you're saving $52. And if you do that, it'll take you to a little over $1,300 for the year. A lot of people say, I can't save $52. And, when it gets to the end of the year, that's kind of a lot of money at once. So you can also do it in reverse order and start with 52 on week 1, 51 on week 2, so on and so forth. You can also break this up if you get paid bi-weekly and do a 26 payday challenge. If it's easier for you to automatically have it come out on your payday, you can save that way. All right. So how do we track our expenses? You told me to go back. You told me to look at my habits, look at my behaviors. How do I do this and keep it up? Well, there are a lot of ways to do that. Physical, you can track it with, if you typically use cash or checks, not a lot of people do checks anymore, I would opt for a physical method to track your expenses. And that may be the envelope or jar method or check register. And this is simply labeling out envelopes into categories. You get all the cash, you divvy it out based on how much you need for each category, and then you spend that as you need it. And you can only spend what's in that envelope. Now, I personally do not want to carry around large amounts of cash. That makes me very nervous. It's not insured. If I lose it, it's gone. But for some people, they physically need to see the money leaving their hands to realize that this is real money that I'm spending. If you are a little bit more digital friendly, which probably this is where most of us fall, you primarily use credit cards, debit cards, tap to pay, something like that. Or maybe you use a mix of cards and cash, you may want a digital method of tracking your expenses. And so this is going to be pretty simple, Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets. I personally love a Google Sheet because it does all the math for me. I can access it on my phone, my desktop, wherever I go. I do have one linked here. And you can utilize it. And what it does is it breaks everything down in categories that you set and assign. And then you go in and you put in all of your transactions, and it automatically pulls from the categories to see where you are, if you're over. And one thing I love about this is if you miss a transaction or you put in the wrong number, you go in, you correct it, and it automatically updates the math so you can see exactly where you're at. And then the final method is if you're super tech savvy, you may want to do everything through technology and through an app. And there are multiple ways to do this. There are multiple fintech apps, budgeting apps, and even digital banking apps. So if you haven't really looked at your financial institution, a lot of them offer this in their own banking app now, where it will go ahead and categorize your spending for you so you don't have to do it. And if maybe you have multiple accounts at different places, you might want to consider a budgeting app that you can link those accounts and it will do it for you and pull everything in. So you're not having to do it across multiple platforms. I would just advise that when you do that, be very aware and make sure you're vetting whatever app you're using, because with your finances, you want to make sure if you're linking or syncing anything that it is with something reputable and safe and that your information is not going to be compromised. All right. And then the last thing you need to do is you need to follow through. Whatever spending plan you set up, you need to follow through with it. It doesn't do you any good if it's just hanging out there and you're not utilizing it. So we want you to use concepts you've learned, apply the right tools to help you, and then make adjustments along the way. And remember, nothing is set in stone. So we don't want you to get discouraged or upset, or you say, oh, I overdrew my account, I'm right back where I started, I'll never do this. You don't have to think like that. It's not all or nothing. You can make tiny adjustments as you go. And if you do mess up and you overdraw your account or you forget a payment and you get a late fee, take a deep breath, reassess, go back and let's look. Okay, I need to look at my income. I need to look at my expenses. Maybe I need to set a reminder. How did I overdraw this time? What did I do different? Track all of those things, go back through your steps, and then start over again. It's totally fine. And then lastly, we want you to utilize resources. So we're a financial institution. We have lots of things that we can offer to help you with finances. We have webinars similar to this that go on monthly called Life Lessons, and they hit every single topic from budgeting to credit to first-time home or auto buyers. And that can give you a little bit more info if you're looking for a specific topic. We also utilize social media to share tips and tricks and blogs that give you financial information. And maybe you don't want to go and ask somebody. Going back to that guilt or that shame, you can look this up and find reputable information and utilize that as a starting point. And then Legacy also offers one-on-one financial counseling sessions that are virtual. So if you say, okay, I see I can track my stuff with Google Sheets or with an app, and I know how to look at my income, I know how to see my expenses, but I just don't feel confident putting this into action myself. I kind of want somebody to hold my hand, walk me through it, see what I'm missing, see where else I can cut back that maybe I'm not seeing. You can absolutely reach out and you can schedule a financial counseling session with one of our certified credit union financial counselors. And that can be a one-time thing, or it can be a series of sessions where they start you off with a plan. They come through your specific scenario and situation. They help you come up with the plan. Then they check in with you and they see how you're doing, what adjustments need to be made and how you need to go forward. And they can really walk alongside you in that and help you make some better decisions. I would also say we've got the internet and we've got social media, and there are tons of resources out there, but make sure when you are looking at resources, anybody can make a TikTok. So make sure whoever you're looking to for your financial information is someone that really needs to be an expert in the subject matter. See what their credentials are. See who they're affiliated with. Do they come from a financial institution? Are they pushing a product on you? At Legacy, we would love for you to be members, but we want you to go somewhere where you feel like you are taken care of, wherever that is, whatever the best financial situation is for you. If you're looking for investment advice, we highly encourage you to see someone who is in that arena and can give you good information so you don't end up making decisions based on information that's not 100% accurate. So you've got a ton of resources out there, and we would love to be a resource for you here at Legacy. I know the Alumni Society has lots of resources for you as well. And I hope you're able to get something from this and feel a little bit more confident from that first poll of what you can do to start out going forward, to start with a better budget and financial foundation.
Fantastic information. And we do have questions coming in. If you have a question, go ahead, drop it in the chat. We've got time to go ahead and answer those. We're going to try to get as close to 1 o'clock without going over. If we do get a flood of questions, if not, that's okay too. I do want to start out, recap the breakdown of the 50, 30, 20, mainly that second part, the second column that you had. Somebody mentioned that the math wasn't exactly reaching, so they want a breakdown of that. Do you remember that slide?
I don't. Let me see if I can pull it up. 1 second.
Not a problem.
And if the math isn't mathing, it may be because I put it in wrong.
And that's not a problem at all. But we wanted to make sure that people are budgeting appropriately if we can give them that information.
Yes, absolutely.
And as we go there, we are getting those questions in, so keep those questions coming. And Abby's going to be coming back, I believe it's next month. I believe it's in a month, almost from now, with Budgeting 201. So we'll continue the conversation as well with some other steps that you can do that's more than just basic. So Abby, you just raise your hand when you have it. And
okay, how about this? I'm going to take a look at that, and I will get that answer for you, because I don't want to spend too much time and miss everything else, but I promise I'll come back to that.
Awesome. Not a problem at all. So person loved the information. She wants to know, how do we save when inflation and things like our medical insurance keeps going up, but our wages don't?
That is something that we are seeing everywhere. I feel it in my household. And I just had the discussion the other day. I was like, we've got to get back on looking at what we can do, because sometimes it is hard. It is hard to save when you know I'm scraping everything I can together just to get by. And in those situations, that may be all you can do. It may be, unfortunately, a time frame where you have to go, I have audited every single thing that comes into my bank account, and I have looked at every single thing that goes out, and I cannot make cuts anywhere. I can't save anything extra. And that's okay for a time period, as long as you're aware of that and you know this is not forever. I'm going to either change my income. I'm going to figure out something that pays me more, which is hard to do, or I'm going to continue to look and audit my expenses, because there are lots of things that I deem as necessary. Like, I can't go without internet or streaming services, but if I really, really got down to it, maybe I can make it work for a few months until maybe inflation leveled out a little bit more and the groceries come back down. So there are some things that you may not be able to do it, but take a second look at those things that you deem essential that maybe aren't fully essential or can be put on pause temporarily, and then come back to them.
So when it comes to the short, medium, long-term goals, I know we talked about all of them. Is there one that's more important than the rest, or does it just depend on who you are?
I think it depends on who you are. And the amount that you're going to have to spend for each of those is also going to depend on your life situation and circumstances. If you know that if you have children, I don't know how many people are in that phase of life. If you have children, but you know that the grandparents are saving for their college education, and that's something you don't have to save for, well, that's going to take something off of your plate. If you know that your retirement through your employer is excellent and they have a great match, so instead of having to put 10% of a paycheck in, you're only having to put 7 to reach that 10%. Those things are going to differ situationally. Also, it's just going to be where you are in your life. If you know that you just paid off your car and you're not looking to buy a new home anytime soon, well, then your medium-term goals are probably going to be a little bit different, and you can look towards other things. Now, I would determine for you what is the most pressing, what is the biggest number one goal, and then make sure you're putting what you can towards that and adjust accordingly.
Somebody had a question about Google Sheets. I dropped that in there, the link where to find that. And I think it's important. You kind of hit it right on the head, where it depends on life stages. Abby's life stage right now is she's got chaos. She's got almost 1.5-year-olds just screaming all over the place. So her expenses and goals are different. My wife and I were on the other end, where our kids are just about to be done with college. So our spending and our saving is different. So it does all depend on where you're at. So any suggestions on budgeting apps, and maybe free budgeting apps, that will help all your methods?
I don't personally have one that I specifically endorse, because I use a lot of the budgeting tools that's available in our digital banking platform. But I have heard good things about Rocket Money. I haven't used that a lot, but I do see that they have a free option that will link if you have multiple bank accounts or accounts across different institutions. I've heard it is good for that, because you can link and it'll pull all of that into one for you. And then they also have things that are, I think, premium that you pay for, that it'll go through and like audit your subscriptions for you, which, depending on the time you have, you got to weigh your resources. Does it make sense to pay for that and let somebody else do it to take care of and cancel it? Or, do you want to stay with the free version and just do that yourself? But that is one I've heard pretty good things about. But I would encourage you to look at your financial institution and see what they offer, because that's probably going to work best with your account already.
And use that Google machine, because, the more research you do too, the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to make an educated decision on where you're going to be. Any specifics for somebody already retired and relying on Social Security?
I I don't have a ton of specifics on that because I am nowhere near that life stage. But I would say in that case, I would definitely reach out to somebody who is a financial planner. Sometimes you can find some that will do free consultations and all of that, because that's also going to depend. Are you just relying on Social Security, or do you have any type of retirement account or pension? Are you getting any type of disability, anything like that that will add? Because I know Social Security can be a little bit volatile, and that it absolutely is not keeping up with inflation. And it's very hard to live on just that income alone. So in that case, I would say you don't want to be doing anything risky with your money. You've got to be really careful if you're investing in anything or what you're doing day to day, because you don't have new income coming in. So reach out to a financial advisor for that, and that's going to be your best bet.
We had somebody try the 60, 20, 10, 10 method before. Somewhere they stopped. They're not sure if you might have mentioned that. So can you recap 60, 20, 10, 10?
I don't think I mentioned that.
It was more the 50, 30, 20, if I remember right.
Yes, and I will go back and make sure that I get you the information to correct that so you can include it in the email.
Fantastic. Any advice to get our young adult children interested in budgeting and savings? I love that question because that's exactly where I'm at.
Yes. Okay. The best thing you can do for that is start young. And I feel like growing up, money seemed to be a very, that was adult business. We don't include our kids in that. Or you saw the opposite, where the kids kind of maybe knew a little bit too much, but not in a way that taught them anything. So I would say, I don't know if you want to start with allowances or if your kids receive money as gifts or anything like that, but I would first start and make sure they have a savings account. And then if they're of the age where they're trying to do things on their own and take your debit card and do something, there are a lot of options for youth checking accounts. Some start with a debit card even as young as 13 if you feel like your child is mature enough to handle that, and mom and dad are able to manage and be on that account and watch it. But just including them in the process, and even if you have a small child, starting with hypotheticals and play money. You get fake money for the chores you do around the house, and then they can cash that in with real money and real prizes, so they understand the value of the work versus what you make. And then you transition to whether it's they're getting an actual job, and you sit down with them and you go over their paycheck. I mean, the first time I got a paycheck and I was like, where did all my money go? And my mom was like, taxes exist. Don't know if you realize that. Taxes exist. Same with the first time I made a student loan payment. And I was like, what? The amount that went to principal? I basically only made one payment to principal. If you don't know that before, and you don't have somebody who sits down and goes, I know this is boring. I know you don't want to learn this, but I'm trying to set you up for success early on, that's going to be the best way you hook them. And then also where you can make it fun, add in little incentives. Hey, if you sit down and do XYZ and you keep your checking account positive for 3 months in a row, I'll slip you an extra 50, 20, 100, whatever you want to do, but early and often when it comes to finances.
Abbi, thanks so much for taking time to be with us today.
Absolutely.
It has been fantastic. And a quick note, we'll recap and highlight her upcoming webinar here in a moment. Just a quick note for today's audience. This webinar was recorded, and once it's uploaded onto our website, we'll get an email with the link so you can revisit the session or share it with others. And as we close, here are the next 4 webinars on tap through our office. Come back on January 22nd for From Stuck to Inspired, Rethinking Your Career Journey through our partnership with Mission Collaborative. On January 28th, join us for the first in a series of leadership webinars with The Evolving Leader from Authority to Authenticity with Dr. Alan Gorman. Then on February 19th, Abbi's going to be back for Budgeting 201, Leveling Up Your Financial Plans as a follow-up to Budgeting 101. And finally, join us on February 25th for The Humble Narcissist, the second in that leadership series, The Humble Narcissist, Leading with Humility with Dr. Matthew Scher. Register for all of these and more by visiting alumni.uab.edu/events. As we wrap up, we'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps us improve and shape future webinars. Just scan the QR code on your screen to access a brief survey, and it's really brief, and share your thoughts with us. Once again, thanks so much for joining us. And as always, go Blazers.